When my father passed away, I thought losing him would be the hardest part. But I was wrong. The pain of losing him was nothing compared to what came next. My sister Vanessa, who had always acted like she was better than everyone, laughed in my face the day after the funeral. She told me that I would end up with nothing. Not the house, not the family business, not even a single dollar. I just stood there, trying not to cry. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Rachel Morgan. I grew up in a small town where my dad, Thomas Morgan, built everything from scratch. He started a small real estate business and worked hard every single day. My sister Vanessa and I were complete opposites. She was bold, loud, and always chasing attention. I was quiet, simple, and more focused on family. Dad used to say we were two sides of the same coin, but over time, Vanessa started to believe she was the only side that mattered. When Dad got sick, I was the one who stayed with him. I cooked for him, took him to the hospital, and handled his business meetings when he couldn't. Vanessa rarely came by. She said she was too busy networking and managing her future plans. I never complained. I didn't do it to earn anything. I did it because he was my dad. But even then, I could see how she looked down on me, as if caring for him was some kind of weakness. After he passed, Vanessa acted like she had already inherited everything. She started talking about renovations for the house and how she would modernize the business once it was under her name. Every time she spoke, I felt this deep sting in my chest. I couldn't understand how she could be so cold right after our father's death. At night, I would sit in Dad's old office, staring at the pictures on his desk. One photo was of the three of us, me, Vanessa, and Dad, smiling during a family picnic. I missed that version of us. The one before greed and pride got in the way. Mom didn't say much during that time. She just stayed quiet, caught between us. I could tell she was hurt too, but she didn't want to choose sides. It made me feel more alone. Every day after the funeral, Vanessa's attitude grew worse. She would throw comments like, "You'll see, Rachel, Dad trusted me with everything. You were always just the emotional one." I tried to ignore her, but inside my heart was breaking. I didn't care about the money or the property. I just wanted respect and a little kindness. Still, I stayed calm. I focused on cleaning Dad's office, organizing his files, and taking care of Mom. Deep down, I believed Dad had left things in order. He always did. What I didn't know then was that the truth, and the lawyer's reading of the will, would soon change everything. After the funeral, our house didn't feel like home anymore. Every corner that once held laughter now carried tension. Vanessa walked around like she owned the place. She didn't even look sad. She arrived wearing an expensive black dress, heels clicking against the floor, as if she were walking into a business event, not our father's farewell. She smiled politely at the guests, but her eyes carried something cold, a sense of pride, not grief. When the guests left, she made herself a drink, sat on Dad's old leather chair, and crossed her legs like she was testing how it would feel to sit there permanently. I stood in the doorway, watching her, trying to understand how she could be so calm. Mom was sitting quietly on the couch, staring at the family photo on the wall. She didn't say a word. She never liked conflict, and now, her silence felt like a heavy wall between us. Vanessa started talking about the business right away. "Dad told me so many times he wanted me to take over Morgan Family Realty," she said, spinning the chair slowly. "He said I had the mind for it. I'm sure he left everything in my name." She said it with such confidence that for a moment, I almost believed her. I tried to remind her that Dad hadn't even been gone a week. "Vanessa, maybe we shouldn't talk about this right now," I said softly. "It's not about the money. He'd want us to be together as a family." She turned her head sharply and gave me that same smirk I had known since childhood, the one that always made me feel small. "You were always the emotional one, Rachel," she said. "That's why you'll never run anything. You think life runs on feelings. It doesn't. It runs on power." Her words hit hard, but I didn't respond. There was no point arguing. She was too deep in her own world to see how cruel she sounded. I could feel Mom's eyes flicker toward us for a second, but she didn't speak. Maybe she didn't know what to say, or maybe she was afraid of choosing a side. That night, I went upstairs and sat in my old room. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that makes your heart ache. I could hear Vanessa downstairs, talking on the phone, laughing, making plans as if the will reading was just a formality. She even mentioned redecorating the house, calling it her new start. I wanted to scream, to remind her that this was still Dad's home, that his things were still here, his scent still on the furniture, his handwriting still on notes scattered across his desk. But instead, I stayed quiet. Mom came to my room later that night. She looked tired, older than before. She placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't let her anger take your peace." Then she left, her eyes glistening with tears she was trying to hide. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, realizing that my family wasn't just grieving a death. We were breaking apart. Vanessa had already chosen money over love. I didn't know what Dad had written in his will, but I hoped somehow he had seen all of this coming. Because deep down, I knew one thing: the real fight hadn't even started yet. A week after the funeral, Mom and I drove to Dad's lawyer's office. The drive was quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the car and the occasional sniffle from Mom. Neither of us said much. I think we were both nervous, though for different reasons. I wasn't expecting anything. I just wanted to get through it peacefully. But deep down, I could feel that the day was going to change everything. When we arrived, Vanessa was already there. She was dressed in a bright red blazer, her hair perfectly styled, and her fiancé, Mark, stood beside her looking proud. She turned to him and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "This will be quick." I knew what she meant. She was so sure everything belonged to her that she didn't even try to hide it. The lawyer, Mr. Carter, had been our family's attorney for as long as I could remember. He was an older man with kind eyes and a calm voice. He had known Dad since before either of us were born. When he greeted us, I could see sadness in his face. He had cared about my father too. We all sat down at a long wooden table. The air in the room was heavy, and the ticking clock on the wall made every second feel slower. Mr. Carter cleared his throat and opened a thick brown folder with Dad's handwriting on it. I felt my stomach twist. "Your father prepared his will carefully," he began, looking at both of us. He wanted his final wishes to be understood clearly. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, smiling slightly, tapping her manicured nails on the table. She was confident, relaxed, and completely sure she knew what was coming. Mr. Carter continued reading. "Mr. Thomas Morgan has divided his estate under certain conditions." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "The business and the house are to go to the daughter who upholds his legacy through integrity, compassion, and hard work." Vanessa straightened in her seat, her smile fading just a little. "That's obviously me," she said quickly. "Dad always trusted me with the company." Mr. Carter didn't respond. He simply kept reading. Before his passing, Mr. Morgan made arrangements to ensure his decision would be fair and based on truth. He turned a few pages, his tone firm but calm. He left instructions that his lawyer must present evidence and messages he recorded in private. The room went silent. Even Vanessa stopped tapping her nails. I could see her eyes darting across the papers on the desk, as if she was trying to find her name somewhere, some proof that everything still belonged to her. Mark looked at her nervously, whispering, "Babe, what does he mean by that?" But Vanessa didn't answer. Her confidence began to fade, replaced by confusion. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, trying to keep my heart steady. I hadn't expected any of this. Mr. Carter placed a small flash drive on the table and said quietly, "Your father wanted you both to hear this before I continue." Vanessa frowned. "A video?" He nodded. "Yes." He wanted to speak for himself. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the computer as Mr. Carter plugged in the drive. The screen flickered, and then my father's face appeared, calm, gentle, and wise as always. Vanessa's posture stiffened. I felt my throat tighten. Mr. Carter pressed play. Dad's voice filled the room. And in that instant, everything, the tension, the arrogance, the silence, stopped. The truth was about to unfold, and I could tell from the look in Vanessa's eyes that she knew this was not going to go the way she had imagined. The moment the video started, the room went completely still. The only sound was my father's calm, steady voice coming from the screen. His face appeared just as I remembered, kind eyes, gentle smile, and that familiar warmth that always made me feel safe. But this time, there was something else in his tone. Something serious. "To my daughters," he began, pausing for a moment. "I know who showed up when I needed help, and who disappeared when things got hard." Vanessa's confident posture started to fade. Her hands, which had been resting on the table, clenched slightly. Mark looked at her, confused, but she avoided his gaze. I sat quietly, my heart pounding. I didn't know what Dad was going to say next, but part of me already understood what he meant. Dad continued. Life tested me in my last years, not just through illness, but through people. I wanted to see who stood by me without expecting anything in return. One of my daughters took care of me, managed my appointments, and handled my business when I couldn't. The other stayed away, chasing her own comfort. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her eyes darted toward Mr. Carter, then back to the screen. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. I built this business with honesty and compassion, Dad's voice went on. It was never just about money or power. It was about people, our employees, our clients, and our family. And I wanted that same spirit to live on through the person who truly understood it. The video paused for a second, and I could hear Vanessa whisper under her breath, "This can't be happening." Then Dad's voice returned, softer this time. "Vanessa, I love you. You have drive and ambition, but you've forgotten what really matters. You measure success in status, not heart. Rachel, you showed me loyalty when I had nothing left to offer. You didn't do it for reward, you did it out of love." Tears filled my eyes, but I tried to hold them back. I could feel Mom's hand rest gently on my shoulder, and when I looked at her, her eyes were wet too. Dad took a deep breath in the video before finishing. "So, my final decision is simple. The business and the house go to Rachel. I trust her to carry my name with integrity. Vanessa, I hope this teaches you something that money never could." The screen went black. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Vanessa's face had turned pale. She stared blankly at the dark screen, then looked at Mr. Carter as if expecting him to say it was a mistake. "There must be some kind of misunderstanding," she snapped. "He didn't mean it like that." Mr. Carter shook his head gently. "Your father's instructions were very clear, Vanessa. He recorded this video himself, and the will was signed and witnessed months before his passing." Vanessa's voice broke into anger. He was sick. He didn't know what he was saying. But even as she shouted, I could see the truth in her eyes. She knew deep down that Dad had meant every word. The arrogance she carried into that room was gone. All that remained was shock and disbelief. I sat quietly, not out of pride, but out of grief. It wasn't about winning or losing. I would have given everything just to hear his voice in person one more time. But in that moment, I realized Dad had seen everything. Every late night, every tear, every quiet moment I thought went unnoticed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. As the video continued, my father's voice grew softer but clearer, the kind of tone he used when he wanted us to really listen. He started talking about his final months, about how he had been watching both of us carefully. "I needed to know," he said, "not who wanted my wealth, but who valued my time." He explained how he had quietly tested us without saying a word. When he grew weaker, he noticed who came to visit, who called to check on him, and who made excuses. "I didn't tell either of you how serious my condition was at first," he continued, "because I wanted to see who would stay even when there was nothing to gain." My chest tightened as I listened. I remembered all those nights sitting by his bed, helping him with his medication, and handling his phone calls when he was too tired. I did it out of love, not duty. I never thought he was keeping track. Dad mentioned how I had stepped up to manage small parts of the business when he couldn't. I had taken calls from clients, handled payroll issues, and kept things running smoothly so he wouldn't worry. He said it gave him peace knowing someone cared enough to protect what he had built. Then his tone changed. "Vanessa," he said gently, "I know you thought your time was too valuable to spend with me. You said you were too busy expanding your lifestyle, meeting people, and planning new ventures. But I didn't need your success stories. I needed your presence." Vanessa's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, but her expression had changed. Her confidence was slipping away, replaced by something else, guilt, maybe, or fear. Dad went on, "I love both my daughters, but one of you forgot what truly matters. Life isn't about what you own or how others see you. It's about the people who stand beside you when the world turns quiet." He paused for a long moment. Everyone in the room held their breath. Then, with calm finality, he said, "Vanessa, I love you, but you need to learn humility. The business and the house go to Rachel." The room went silent. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner and nothing else. Vanessa's jaw dropped. Her face turned pale as she stared at the screen like it had just betrayed her. Mark tried to put a hand on her shoulder, but she pulled away. Mom covered her mouth, tears rolling down her cheeks. Mr. Carter lowered his head respectfully, giving the moment the weight it deserved. I just sat there frozen, my heart pounding so fast I could hear it in my ears. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like every emotion at once: sadness, relief, disbelief. I had never wanted anything more than peace, and now that I had what Dad left me, I only felt empty. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice shaking. No, this can't be right. He promised me. He said I'd take over. But even she didn't sound convinced. Mr. Carter didn't argue. He simply folded the papers in front of him and said softly, "Your father's wishes are final, Vanessa. He made this decision months before he passed. He wanted to be sure his legacy went to the one who truly cared." Vanessa didn't move. She just stared at the blank screen long after the video ended, as if hoping Dad's voice would come back and change everything. But it didn't. And for the first time since we entered that office, I understood exactly what Dad meant. He wasn't just leaving behind a business or a house. He was leaving a lesson. As soon as the video ended, the silence in the room shattered. Vanessa suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was red with anger, her voice shaking as she shouted, "This is ridiculous. He was sick. You made him change the will, didn't you, Rachel?" Her words hit me like a slap. I couldn't even speak. I just looked at her, trying to understand how she could accuse me of something so cruel. Mr. Carter tried to calm her down, but she turned on him too. "You let this happen. You let her manipulate him," she screamed. Her fiancé, Mark, reached for her arm, whispering, "Vanessa, please don't do this here." But she pulled away, her voice breaking. "Don't tell me to calm down. My own sister stole my inheritance." I felt my throat tighten, but I refused to argue. There was no point. Anything I said would only make her angrier. I looked at Mom, hoping she would say something, but she just sat there quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks. It broke my heart to see her like that, caught between her daughters. Vanessa glared at me again, her eyes full of hate. "You were never the favorite, Rachel. You played the innocent one until the end, pretending to care while you waited to take everything. You're just a gold digger disguised as a caregiver." Her voice cracked on the last word. I finally stood up, my hands shaking. "I didn't want any of this, Vanessa," I said softly. "I just wanted us to stay a family." But she wasn't listening. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, shouting, "You'll regret this. I'll contest the will. I'm not letting you take what's mine." The door slammed so hard behind her that the sound echoed through the room. The moment she was gone, the air felt heavy. Mark stayed behind for a few seconds, looking embarrassed and lost. "I'm sorry," he muttered quietly before following her out. For a long time, no one said a word. Mr. Carter slowly began packing up the papers, giving me a sympathetic look. Then he turned to Mom. "Mrs. Morgan," he said gently, "your husband's wishes were very clear. I'm sorry this caused so much pain." Mom just nodded, still staring at the table. When the lawyer finally left, it was just the two of us sitting there. The sunlight coming through the window made everything feel strange, bright and quiet, but heavy at the same time. After a while, Mom finally spoke. Her voice was soft and shaky. "Your father saw everything, Rachel," she whispered. "He knew your heart. Don't let her break your peace." Those words made me cry for the first time that day. I had held everything in until then, trying to stay strong, but hearing her say that broke something inside me. I didn't feel proud or victorious. I just felt empty. I thought about Dad, about how he had trusted me with everything he built. It should have made me happy, but instead, it made me ache. I hadn't wanted to win. I hadn't wanted to take anything from my sister. I just didn't want to lose what little family I had left. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt colder than ever. Every corner reminded me of him, and every silence reminded me of the fight that had torn us apart. I stood by the window, looking at the lights outside, wishing things could go back to the way they were, before greed, before anger, before we stopped being sisters. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. A few weeks after the will reading, I got a letter from the court. Vanessa had officially filed a lawsuit against me, claiming that I had manipulated Dad into changing his will. My hands trembled as I held the paper. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it still hurt. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was ready to destroy me to get what she wanted. Mom was heartbroken when she found out. "She's really doing this?" she asked quietly. I nodded, unable to speak. The thought of sitting across from my sister in a courtroom made me sick. This wasn't what Dad wanted. He had left everything clear and fair, but Vanessa couldn't accept it. Mr. Carter assured me that we had nothing to fear. He had handled all of Dad's legal work personally and kept detailed records. Your father was very thorough, he told me. He left no room for doubt. When the day of the hearing came, I felt nervous but calm. Vanessa arrived with her lawyer, looking angry and exhausted. The confident spark she once had was gone, replaced by frustration. She wouldn't even look at me. Her lawyer spoke for her, claiming that I had taken advantage of Dad's illness, that I had pressured him while he was weak. Mr. Carter stood up and began presenting evidence, calm, steady, and professional. He brought out copies of Dad's handwritten notes, signed documents, and even dated emails between them. Each one proved that Dad had made the changes months before his condition worsened. Then he presented video recordings that Dad had made while finalizing the will. In each one, Dad clearly explained his decision and thanked Mr. Carter for helping him do it properly. The courtroom was silent as one of those videos played. My father's voice filled the room again, clear and strong. "This is my decision," he said in the recording. "No one forced me. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I want Rachel to carry my name forward." Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue, but the evidence was too solid. Mr. Carter even called one of Dad's business partners as a witness. The man confirmed that Dad had discussed his plans long before his health declined. Every detail matched perfectly. As the truth came out, I could see the anger drain from Vanessa's face. Her confidence cracked under the weight of her own lies. She kept whispering to her lawyer, shaking her head, but it was useless. She had built her case on pride, not proof. When it was finally over, the judge looked directly at her and said firmly, "Your father made his wishes very clear. There is no sign of coercion or fraud. The will stands as it is." The words echoed in the courtroom. Vanessa froze in her seat, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. She didn't say a word. Her lawyer gathered his papers quietly and nodded to her, but she stayed still. I felt no joy, no victory, just relief. It was over. As I left the courtroom, I saw her standing near the door, staring out the window. I thought about saying something, maybe "I'm sorry," or "let's stop this." But she didn't even glance at me. For the first time in my life, I realized she wasn't my sister anymore. Not in the way that mattered. That day, I understood something painful but true. Sometimes blood isn't enough to keep people together. Sometimes, the ones you love the most become the ones who hurt you the deepest. I walked out with Mom and Mr. Carter, the air outside feeling cool and light for the first time in months. The fight was over, but the damage was done. And though I had won legally, I had lost something far more precious, the bond one once had with my sister. Taking over the business after everything that happened didn't feel like a victory. When I walked into Dad's office for the first time as the new owner, the air still carried his scent, a mix of coffee and the cologne he always wore. His chair was still turned slightly toward the window, just like he used to leave it. I stood there for a long time, letting the memories rush in. This was the dream he had built from nothing, and now it was mine to protect. At first, I didn't know where to begin. The company had good people, but after Dad's passing, morale was low. Everyone felt the loss, and the tension from the family drama had reached the workplace. I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let grief or bitterness ruin what Dad worked for. I spent my days learning everything I could, reviewing old contracts and talking to employees one by one. Instead of changing everything at once, I started small. I introduced better communication between departments and made sure every worker felt valued. I kept Dad's traditions alive, the weekly meetings, the open-door policy, the company lunches he loved hosting. Slowly, things started to feel normal again. People began smiling in the hallways, sharing ideas, and trusting me as their leader. Every time I felt lost, I remembered Dad's advice. Lead with your heart, not your ego. That became my rule. I made sure promotions were fair, pay was transparent, and employees were treated with respect. Even in tough decisions, I asked myself what Dad would have done. Running the business also became my way of healing. The more I worked, the less the pain consumed me. I began to see the company not as a burden, but as a piece of him that still lived on. It became my connection to him, something I could nurture, something that carried his legacy forward. As time passed, I started hearing small things about Vanessa. Her engagement ended. Her fiancé, who had stood beside her during the court case, had walked away. Some of her friends stopped returning her calls. She moved out of the city for a while, trying to start over. I didn't take any joy in hearing that. If anything, it made me sad. No matter how angry she had been, she was still my sister. I wish things could have been different. Mom would visit the office often. She'd bring lunch or homemade cookies, the same ones Dad loved. Sometimes she'd sit quietly in his chair, smiling faintly. "He'd be proud of you," she'd say, and those words always made my eyes sting. One afternoon, as I looked at the framed picture of Dad on the office wall, I whispered, "I hope I'm doing this right." In my heart, I knew he was watching. He'd wanted me to grow, not through revenge or pride, but through patience and integrity. And so that's what I did. I grew. The business expanded, the employees thrived, and our name stayed respected in the community. But no matter how much success came my way, I stayed grounded. I remembered how it all began, with a father's faith, a sister's betrayal, and the strength I never knew I had until I was forced to find it. I didn't need to win over anyone. I just needed to live in a way that would make Dad proud. And every day, as I walked through those office doors, I felt a quiet kind of peace, the kind that only comes when you turn pain into purpose. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before opening it. When I did, I froze. Vanessa was standing there. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, and the proud spark in her eyes was gone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt strange seeing her like that, not angry, not arrogant, just broken. She took a deep breath and said, "Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. She walked in slowly, her steps heavy like she was carrying the weight of every bad choice she had made. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock. She looked around, her eyes landing on the family photos hanging in the hallway. One was of Dad, smiling at a company picnic. She stared at it for a long moment before whispering, "I didn't know he was testing us." Her voice cracked a little as she turned to me. "I thought I deserved it all, Rachel. The business, the house, everything. I thought I earned it because I worked hard. But maybe I was just chasing what didn't matter." I didn't rush to answer. For years, I had imagined what I'd say if she ever came back. Maybe something sharp or bitter. But standing there, seeing her like that, all I felt was exhaustion. "You didn't have to earn the inheritance," I said quietly. "You just had to earn Dad's trust." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since we were kids, I saw her cry. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I was so wrong," she whispered. "I was jealous. I thought Dad loved you more because you were with him all the time. I didn't realize you were taking care of him when he was sick. I didn't even show up when it mattered." Her words hit hard, not because they surprised me, but because they were finally honest. I sat down across from her. "He loved us both," I said. "But love isn't something you prove by taking. It's something you show by giving." We sat there for a long time, not talking, just sitting in the silence. The kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just heavy with everything that had gone unsaid for too long. Eventually, Vanessa looked up and asked, "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "I did for a while, but it didn't make me feel better. I don't think Dad would want us to keep hating each other." She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I believed her. Not because her words were perfect, but because they were real. I could see it in her face. She had finally learned what humility felt like. Before she left, she turned at the door. "You've done a good job, Rachel. Dad would be proud." I smiled faintly. "He'd be proud of you too, for coming here today." After she was gone, I stood in the doorway for a while, looking at the quiet street outside. For the first time in a long time, my heart felt lighter. I hadn't let her in because she deserved it. I let her in because I needed to let go. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it finally gave me peace with it. And that was something even an inheritance couldn't buy. Years passed, and life slowly found its balance again. The house that once felt heavy with memories now felt like home. I had painted the walls, kept Dad's old desk in his office, and planted a small garden in the backyard, just like he always wanted to. The business had grown steadily over the years, and people in town began to know the Morgan name again, not for the drama that once surrounded it, but for honesty, compassion, and hard work. One afternoon, I got an email from a journalist from a local business magazine. They were doing a feature on family-owned companies that had overcome challenges, and they wanted to include my story. At first, I hesitated. Talking about the past always made me emotional, but something inside me said it was time to share. Not the pain, but the growth. The day of the interview, I sat across from the journalist in my office. He smiled and asked, "Rachel, what motivated you to rebuild after everything your family went through?" I paused for a moment, thinking about that day in the lawyer's office. The shock, the tears, the betrayal. Then I smiled softly and said, being told I wasn't good enough. He looked surprised, maybe expecting a different kind of answer. But that was the truth. That one moment, when Vanessa laughed in my face, when she said I'd end up with nothing, had changed everything. It broke something inside me at first, but then it became my reason to rise. After the interview, I sat in Dad's office chair and looked around the room. The sunlight poured through the window, hitting the photo of Dad that still sat on his desk. I whispered quietly, "We did it, Dad." I wasn't talking about money or success, I meant peace. I had built a life that felt right, one that honored him in the way he would have wanted. Sometimes I still thought about Vanessa. We spoke occasionally, not often, but enough to stay connected. She had changed. Life had humbled her, and though we would never be as close as before, there was mutual understanding now. We didn't talk about the will or the past anymore. Some things didn't need to be reopened. We just talked about simple things, Mom's health, the garden, the weather. And that was enough. When the magazine finally came out, I saw my photo on the last page under the headline, "From Lost to Legacy, the story of Rachel Morgan." I smiled as I read it, not out of pride, but gratitude. The story didn't glorify success. It spoke about resilience, faith, and forgiveness. As I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sunset, I realized something Dad had known all along. Real wealth isn't in what you inherit. It's in who you become after life tests you. The house, the business, even the pain, all of it had shaped me into someone stronger and wiser. I didn't need revenge, and I didn't need validation. The truth had already done its work. The world had seen me lose, rebuild, and rise again, quietly with grace. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years. I finally understood what Dad meant when he said, "Integrity will outlast every storm." And he was right. I didn't just inherit his house or his business. I inherited his strength, his heart, and his belief that good people always find their way back to peace.